The Osage took their name from Missouri and Osage rivers. Niukanska, children of the Middle Waters. Move, said the great white father. There are many, so many hungry wolves.
So this clip goes on for about another minute, but I can just explain the story. Basically, the Osage Indians had to move from their original area, and they bought themselves a kind of reservation in Oklahoma, I think it was. Turned out subsequently that this reservation had extremely rich veins of oil in it, and it's made these Native Americans, the Osage Indians, it made them instantly fabulously wealthy. They could literally buy anything they wanted. This triggered, set in motion, a terrible tale of white exploitation where these people were bled dry and exploited. And in the end, in order to steal their wealth, if you like, various white tycoons, you know, literally had these Osage Native Americans killed. They were literally sort of systematically murdered. And it's a long story of corruption, really a kind of story of what happened to Native Americans, you know, when the white man took over the great continent of the United States of America. Extraordinary story told in this epic picture. 3.5 hours. Can't wait to see it myself. Big fan of Martin Scorcese, obviously. But let's get the real story of what happened to these people from the Professor of Indigenous and Environmental History at the University of Hull. That's Joy Porter. Good afternoon, Joy.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Tell us the story, because this is a story of tremendous good fortune on the part of the Osage Native Americans, followed by a story of the most ruthless exploitation imaginable. Tell us what happened to them.
Well, I think it's not necessarily good fortune to be forced to relocate to a country that isn't your homeland, on land that the government thought was completely worthless.
Yeah,
and it wasn't.
Okay, I'll take your point, but you also take my point. They did luck out.
Depends how you, well, I guess you're right. It brought a great deal of wealth, but also murder and destruction. But the point of the story really is to say that history is long and they survived. I would say to your viewers, though, that this is not quite like every other Scorsese film. It is 3 hours, 28 minutes, and it's slow-paced, and it's melancholic, and it's very violent. But it's not quite the same as, say, The Wolf of Wall Street or the other kind of fast-paced Scorsese shows. Yeah, well, it doesn't sound like it's necessarily fast-paced at 3.5 hours. His last film, of course, The Irishman, was pretty much the same, but that was more of a what you might call an expected Martin Scorsese film, all about gangsters and the mafia. This isn't his sort of natural type of subject, but it's America's story, isn't it, really? I can really see why he went for it. I mean, there's a lot of violence. It's about crime. It's endemic crime. It's about race. It's a Western. You know, it's epic, and I think he will attract a lot of awards. I think this is one not to miss.
Yeah, and the story that DiCaprio plays a character, what the white exploiters did, they were so ruthless that they organised marriages to the women of the Osage tribe in order to marry into their wealth. DiCaprio plays one such individual who actually did come to actually really love his wife, but Robert De Niro plays DiCaprio's uncle, who really, really was a ruthless exploiter and organised the murder of the Native Americans he sought to exploit.
Yeah, so you got two characters, Ernest and Molly Burkhart, and one is DiCaprio and the other is an amazing Indigenous, she's actually Blackfoot, actress actress, and she really steals the show. Also with De Niro in late stage, you know, really doing a fantastic, you know, this is made by cinematic royalty, and then you have some of the greatest actors. Jesse Plemons is in it. You know, it's unmissable actually as a show.
Yeah. Now, as your general topic, your general subject, Indigenous and environmental history, this is a very unreasonable thing to ask you with just a couple of minutes left, but essentially tell us the story of what happened to the continent of America and the indigenous people who lived there.
In seconds?
Well, I'll give you a couple of minutes. Come on, can't say fairer than that.
Colonization happens. Indigenous people get pushed through trade and other things and disease on top of each other and go sequentially further west. The Osage are forced to Oklahoma. It was called Indian Territory after the Civil War. And the reason that this movie is being created is because it's a fight over resources. And if you want a simple story of the settlement of the West, it's about getting access to resources, not just oil, but timber and coal and water and everything else. It's about that fight for what Europe didn't have at the time, space and resources.
Yes, indeed. And I mean, I've read, you tell me what the truth of this is, that people talk about, you know, genocides, the terrible genocides that often happen when new people colonize a new area. We're talking about the white man, if you like, coming to North America. I've read that as many as 95 million Native Americans may have died in that process.
Although Jewish writers do like to reserve the word genocide for the Holocaust, for the Shoah, and they see that process of colonization and settlement, that the argument is that it's not
different. It's different, yeah. But my broad point, though, that a lot of people were killed in this process.
But disease, as much as anything, had a major impact, as well as massacre and systemic violence and subsequently disadvantage. One of the things I really like about this film is it connects the past violence to violence still happening today. Violence over oil, over race, over who gets access to what. I think that's one of its great strengths.
Yeah. Well, I'm very much looking forward to seeing it, Joy, and you already have, obviously, but listen, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on this fascinating and tragic story. That was Joy Porter, Professor of Indigenous and Environmental History at the University of Hull.